Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Page. I am the conductor and music director of the Portsmouth Symphony Orchestra. And you're very welcome to this lunch-in with the maestro. This is the fifth video that I'm making, and this is part of the Symphony 101 series, where I'm just going through some basics about the orchestra, about the people in the orchestra, what they do, their roles. So you're all very welcome on this Sunday afternoon. I hope you're well. I hope you're staying safe. And at the PSO, we are still trying to keep things rolling. We're still keeping the lights on. So please keep tuning in, watching the amazing programming that's happening. We had an incredible oboe player, Ella, from the My PSO program, who did an amazing job on Friday. Huge kudos to Ella for her explanation of the oboe. Just incredible things. So please keep tuning in, keep watching us. We're going to keep going no matter what until we get back, okay? So on the last video, I talked about that elusive figure, the conductor, the maestro. Who is this person and what do they do? How do they influence an orchestra? What do they bring to the whole process? So I talked a bit about the process. I talked about the three-step process for a conductor: preparation, looking at the score, the rehearsal process itself, and then finally the concert, and how various things affect the decisions that are made. Today, I'm going to continue with the same theme, but move a little more deeply into actually what does the conductor do when they're standing in front of an orchestra. So in rehearsal, obviously, there's a lot of stop and start. You play sections, you make a few adjustments here and there, then you try and put the sections together bigger and bigger until you can play through the whole thing. And that's kind of where you get to the performance. It's really in the performance where the conductor's, I suppose, art comes across as opposed to skill. These are two things that are really important in music to understand. If you're not conversant with music and you're not a musician, there's something you've got to understand about music, and that it's extremely skill-based. It takes 10,000 hours to master an instrument of practice. That takes a huge amount of effort, time, discipline. I can't stress this enough. Music, it comes across, I think, as being this mystical, magical, elusive, beautiful art form, and it is. But underneath all of that, there is an incredible amount of work that goes into it. Technical, skill-based work. And that's the rehearsal process. When working with an orchestra, it's working with those details. When it gets to the performance, that's when we all shift a little bit. We move from being in rehearsal mode into being performance mode, and that's kind of where the art takes off. It's where we try and project our view of whatever music we're playing, or communicate whatever the music's trying to say to an audience. And that's the kind of magic happens there. That's the art. And it's for the players, but it's also for the conductor. So what is a conductor actually doing with these? You know, how does gesture reflect or shape music? It's a really interesting question, because the conductor should not be actually making any sound. The only musician on the stage who doesn't make a sound. Those of you who know me and work with me know that I tend to sing along, and quite a few conductors do. But in essence, you are silent. And how are you influencing and creating and shaping encouraging sound? So it's really through gesture. It's through eye contact. It's through body language. But that's all you have as a conductor. You don't have an instrument. The instrument is there in front of you. It's people. And they have to do the creation of the actual sound. I'm just going to very simply talk about some of the nuts and bolts of being a conductor. First of all, a big question is, what are these? Do we use them? Do we not use them? These are I suppose, the tools of the trade. These are batons. And a long time ago, in the history of conducting, these were made. These were essentially came from, and I'll show you what they came from. They came from this, right? This is a bow. This is it's actually a viola bow, but it's a bow made of wood. Boom, boom, got hair. And the concertmaster, the leader of the group, a long time ago, when they wanted to lead the orchestra and they were just playing and there was no conductor, they would stand up and they would take the bow and they would take the bow hold and they would collapse it to bat and they would wave the bow, and that became the baton. That's how it was born. And today, you can still get violin bow makers who make batons. That's where most conductors go to get their sticks. They go to a violin maker. I used to go to one in London called Givier, and they made all my batons. They made these ones. So yeah, it came from that idea of being a bow. Some conductors don't use a baton, some do. You'll find that choral conductors tend to use their hands. They would not use a stick. I think working with voices, there's something more fluid and like this, right? Rather than this. Again, finding the right words is difficult because you're talking about gesture, you're talking about the relationship between sound and gesture. But choral music, vocal music tends to be more intimate. Why we use these in an orchestra is, I think it's primarily for clarity, so that the orchestra can actually see very clearly, rather than just your hand. Sometimes I just use my hands. Especially in slow music, I would tend to use my hands. But most of the time, you have this in your right or left hand. Generally right hand. There are some left-handed conductors. It's actually, orchestras find it strange working with left-handed conductors because the two hands do different things and the beat patterns and things. So most conductors tend to be right-handed or train themselves to be. So it's for clarity. It's just for being super clear. And there are all sorts of different sizes, right? This is a little bigger than what I tend to use right now, but it's very much a similar style. And these ones were even longer, and they had this cork handle, which is good for grip. But for me, now I've actually changed into something else. You get these sorts of styles. Again, it's very light, extremely light, which is nice. I like that. These are very heavy. I'm not sure I would ever use that. I don't remember when I got it, but it's just a little bit too big and heavy for me. All sorts of styles, including you can get all sorts of beautifully decorated little features, things like that. Yeah, and you get, of course, this is called conductor strike. When the baton hits something when it shouldn't, like the music stand, hopefully not one of the players. Yeah, that's what happened there at the tip. So lots and lots and lots of different kinds and different shapes and different weights and different lengths. This is what I use now. This is smaller than most of those. It's very light, and I think the reason I use it is because it's so light, and it's also got, you're going to find that, like a bow, batons will have a balance point, and for me that's perfect. It's exactly where I want it to be, just wrapped around that first finger. And how you hold it? Well, many different ways. But this is generally how I hold it. In the hand, across like that, close, oh, you can see it, close around and turn it around. That's it. So this finger actually can be part of the process of actually creating movement. And the movement of the stick is really, of course, one of the most important things that we do as a conductor. And there are different patterns, there are different shapes, I'll show you in a minute. So that's the right hand has got the stick. There tends to be this idea that the right hand and left hand are separated, that the right hand was for essentially the beat, the tempo, the meter, and the left hand was for more expressive things, like there's the entry, or you play out a little bit or a little bit less. So left hand is more free to express. In reality, the two things are interconnected, obviously. They're not separated out. We're not robotic. We're human beings, and our gestures and movements tend to be integrated. So you'll find both sides of your body working together. But what does it actually look like? Well, I'll show you. Very quick conducting lesson, right? I'll even stand up. So I hope you can still hear me. So, yeah. Stick in the right hand. Left hand is free. You notice my grip is like this. It can change. There are times when I conduct like this. There are times when I conduct like that. It depends on the music. Completely depends on the music. But just for clarity's sake, I'll go back to the basic grip, which is this. And you're going to find that in the right hand, in the baton hand, that you're able to control the stick from the smallest movements, just your fingers, right? That's just my forefinger. I'm outlining a 4 pattern. This is how you beat 4. Most orchestral music, most classical music has got a 4/4 somewhere in it, right? So it's 4 beats in a bar. And that's what they are. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll find that the beat is there, there, there. And that's where the beat is. And that's what the players are looking for. See that little bop that I gave it? Bop. That ictus. It's a little impulse telling you exactly what beats are. That's the 4 pattern. And I can start that 4 pattern just with my finger. And then I can use my wrist. And then I can use my forearm. And then I can use my whole arm. And you just make it bigger. You can make it bigger to be bigger in terms of sound, in terms of the gesture you want. You can make it smaller to be more intimate and out of the way. The baton should never really get in the way of the music. It should be there to help. What do the players need from the conductor? Sometimes you're super clear. You've got to be, just like that, right? So everybody knows where everything is. Sometimes you can be a little more artistic. Yeah. Depends really on what the music's doing. And if you remember that this came from this, right? It came from a bow. Think about how bows are used. They're used in the viola and in the violin, drawing across the instrument, or the cello, or bass, drawing across a different plane. If you're trying to elicit a certain way of playing with the bow from the strings, then you want your stick to look like that. Yeah. It can be very short as well, or it could be stopping. Just show people where you want to be. Very short, sharp, boom, and that's the way they'll play. Hopefully, you do that. It's a little bit more round-edged. Yeah. So that's your 4 pattern. We call it floor, wall, wall, ceiling. Bum, bum, bum. 4. 3 is a triangle. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Bum, 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 bum. Various different variations of that. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3. Depends on who you are, but most orchestras know what the 3 pattern looks like. That's what they're looking for. 2 pattern, even simpler. It's just a 1, a 2, 1, 2. Beats in exactly the same place. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, that's your 2. And that's just being very, very simply technical about it. That's what it looks like. There are other meters. They get mixed up. You know, your 5/8 will have big beats and small beats, like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ba, 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 ba. Right? But they're all variations on either a 2 or a 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, da, ba, ba, 7. 1, 2, da, 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 da. That's a variation on the 3. So they're all variations of that beat. Even a 6/8, a broad 6/8 where you're conducting all 6 beats, will look like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's almost like a 2. Right? You go in, out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the variations of those 3 basic things, that's what an orchestra is looking for. This hand, it's free to express. You can give entries, you can give a little bit of encouragement, or encouragement to play a little less. So there's lots of different ways in which this hand can affect it. And sometimes this hand can take over. If you don't want anything to be particularly stressed or with impulse, you can just have this sweeping sense of line. And this is where I want to get to with this, is the idea of line. I talked about it before. What does it mean? Well, line is everything in most music. I wouldn't say all music. Line is what carries the music. It's usually a theme or a melody. Our problem is, and I've just outlined it, our problem is that we are kind of bound by this notation, which has now seeped into technique, of the bar line. What's a bar line? Well, this is a bar line. It's very simple, right? It's a line that goes all the way down from the top, all the way down through the orchestra. And that bar line will tell you, it's just telling you where to line it up. So this is a 6/8 piece, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's got 6/8 notes in it. You don't need to worry too much about it. If you look at this timpani part, you'll see it, right? You'll see all 6 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's a bar line. And it was there originally just to get players to line up. And it is really the enemy of all music. You have to get rid of the bar lines to make music. You have to let that disappear. I would love to take a whiteout and just go through all my scores and just take out those bar lines out, because, okay, there's where we are. Geography, location, there's where we are in the music. The conductor is responsible for that. But once the orchestra gets to know the piece, it's, they know where they are. You know, sometimes little cues just say, here you are, or yes, you're right, there's your entry, or but most of the time they know where they are by the time you get to perform the piece. They know the piece. They don't need to know where the bar lines are. And that's kind of where the conductor's art, for me, comes in. I get away from this very technical, prescribed way of shaping music through gesture to something a little more free. And let it all unfold. And sometimes you get a long melody and you just let it happen. And that's really where the conductor can influence and can encourage an orchestra to just let that bar line disappear, evaporate, and start creating long lines of music. It takes us on a journey. That's the real key, isn't it? When you take away the things that anchor us to the earth and we just let it fly, that's when we can go on a journey. And that's really what music does. So I have a case study, which is the piece I just showed you, which is Brahms' First Symphony, and I'm going to look at that in the next video, and I'm going to talk about line again. We're going to look at the piece, the opening of it. We're going to talk about what the conductor does and what the conductor is looking for and trying to bring out of the orchestra and also what the orchestra needs, some of the technical things that the orchestra would need. So at this point, I'm going to stop. I hope I've given you some insight into the skill, technique, and a little bit of the art of conducting. I'll do a little bit more of that on Wednesday. We'll talk more about the art and about the performance, and we'll take a case study and look at it. And we'll move on from there. So I hope you found this interesting. If you have, please let me know. If you have any further suggestions or questions you want me to bring up or address, also let me know. I'm happy to take suggestions and talk about them and run with those ideas. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the weekend and start of the week. Stay safe, look after each other, and I will